All right. So we've talked about beneficence and benefits, and I've kind of hinted at some of the topics in this second section for research ethics. In this section, we're talking about confidentiality, consent, and coercion. These are pretty straightforward, but they are things that you need to think about more carefully when you're doing research. First, privacy and confidentiality. As I said in the previous section, privacy is an important aspect of research. We don't want to just throw people's information out into the public. And usually when you do research, you'd never actually present information from a particular person. 9 times out of 10, when you gather data from people, you average it together and you talk in generalities. You talk in overall conclusions. And if you need to say something about a specific person, you never want to mention who they were. And it's best to try and paraphrase the information. So if they give you a quote and the quote really, really matters, you might say that quote but not mention who said it, or not mention. You may even be careful to avoid saying, if you say maybe this was a female in her late 20s, you may avoid saying that because it could potentially cause a situation where the confidentiality of that participant was broken. So confidentiality is just maintaining a person's privacy, and as I said in the previous video, all research is going to be subject to trying to maintain confidentiality for your participants, and privacy is always going to be a risk, no matter what happens. One of the things that researchers do is that in addition to never ever presenting data from a specific person, or at the very least never ever pointing out a specific person or presenting a person's personal information like their name or phone number or email address, you always want to try and use participant numbers in your research. So when I do research, I have people come in and I know who they are because they signed up, so they have to give me their name and their email. But when I'm gathering data, they get a number. So we're going to say this is participant number 1234, and all of the data is going to be associated to that number. If we still need their personal information for whatever reason, if we have to call them back in this study, if we have to email them or whatever, we can keep that information, and then when the study's done, get rid of all of that information that we don't need, so we just have the relevant study data. That way we can try and conserve that privacy as much as possible so we don't accidentally put it anywhere where people can get to it. Now, consent is a simple and very important topic in research. Consent is the idea that participants should willingly choose to participate. So when you ask a participant, hey, do you want to participate in my research study? And they say yes, that is consent. On screen right now, I have a consent form that I've actually used in one of my previous studies. This was a study that was about asking students some information about how well they did on tests, and it provides information like that. So most consent forms will tell you generally what's going on in the study, what things could affect them in the study, risks. Sometimes they provide more information about the study, like how many people are participating, where the people are being gathered from, what benefits you might get in the study is another important thing. So in this case, the students were participating for class credits. One of the things that it's important to be aware of is that so if those benefits are really, really, really important, you don't want people to participate in your study because they need those benefits. And this is where something called coercion comes in. So coercion is the idea that you are somehow encouraging a person to participate in your study aside from their own will. Like in the previous video we mentioned, if you're doing research on homeless people and you're saying, well, if you participate in my research study, I'll give you food. Those homeless people may really, really need the food, and so they may participate in the study even because they really have no other choice. If you are doing research on prisoners. So prisoners always have some sort of psychological counsel. They have some sort of therapist that they talk to for a lot of different reasons. And if you're doing research on prisoners, they may not have a choice to really participate. They may believe that they have to participate as part of their prison sentence. They may believe that if they participate in the research, their prison sentence will be reduced or they'll get better treatment or something like that. And so that situation, you want to be careful because that could easily fall into coercion because they're participating not really out of their free will. Even research into students can be a little bit coercive. So most research is done on college students and it's done for college credit. it's important that those students are given the opportunity to get that credit some other way. So they don't have to participate in research. If they want, they could write a paper or do an extra activity or something. The reason for that is, again, you never want people to participate in research outside of their will. And if they feel like they have to do the research for whatever reason, they're not really making a willful decision there. So that's really it for this section. Three very simple concepts. Privacy and confidentiality. Let's avoid giving people's information out and try and always de-identify data. Use participant numbers in your data to make sure that you don't just save people's information when you don't need to. Consent is very important. Make sure people are participating willingly and that you have some document that says so. So a lot of times, most times when you do research, people will get a piece of paper that's called the consent form, and they'll sign it and you'll sign it, and the consent form should be signed only after they're aware of like what's going on in the study, what they're getting themselves into, and what rights they have, like the right to leave at any moment without risking anything. And in fact, most research situations involve a person where as soon as they start participating in the study, they are eligible for the benefits to the study no matter what. So if 5 minutes into this study they quit, they still should get the credit because, again, they're not participating. They shouldn't ever be participating because they're getting the credit. It's just that they're getting the credit to encourage them to participate, if that makes sense. And then lastly, you want to be careful to avoid coercion. Any situation where you're getting someone to participate that's not really totally within their choice.